Good morning. I'm Kate Seeley, Vice President for Arts and Culture at MEI, and I want to welcome you to today's panel. We're looking forward to a great conversation with two of the Paris-based artists in MEI's current show in this Moonless Black Night, Syrian art after the Uprising. The exhibit marks the 10th anniversary of the Syrian Revolution and features the work of 14 leading Syrian contemporary artists reflecting on the past decade of trauma and displacement. Now, the exhibit is open to the public for timed appointments and will be up until July 16th. We're open Mondays through Fridays from 10 to 5 p.m., closed briefly for lunch, and you can make an appointment on our website. Now, the show can also be viewed online at mei.edu, but the power of the show is in seeing the works in person in the gallery. And the show got a beautiful review in the Washington Post recently. And a recent visitor, a docent from the Hirshhorn Museum, just yesterday called it a gem of an exhibit. So please, please don't miss it. Now, today's panel is organized in collaboration with the Cultural Services of the French Embassy here in Washington as part of their museum series. And we're delighted to be partnering with them and look forward to doing more together. So thanks so much to Mr. Denis Canel, the cultural attaché at the French Embassy, and his team for helping make this program possible. We'll be hosting another panel featuring the Berlin-based artists in June, as well as screening several Syrian films in partnership with the Syrian-run production company Bidayat for audiovisual arts. So keep a lookout for these events, and thanks so much to the Violet Jabara Foundation for their support of the exhibit. Now, thanks also to our artists today, Bady, Dalloul, and Nagham, for taking time out of your very busy schedules. We love your work. Thank you so much for being with us and for participating in this exhibition. And thanks also to our moderator, Vanessa Badre. Very briefly, this is MEI's, the MEI Art Gallery's 6th exhibit to date. We opened a little more than a year and a half ago in the fall of 2019, and then COVID hit. Although we have been programming throughout, and our gallery has been open since October, but we were set up as a space inside the Middle East Institute to showcase artists from the region and to serve as a platform for dialogue and exchange in Washington and nationally. So if you aren't familiar with MEI or our past exhibits and many, many panels and cultural events, please check us out at mei.edu on the Arts and Culture page. Now, just a few housekeeping notes for our audience before I hand it over to Mr. Canel. To submit your questions, please use Zoom's Q&A feature, which you can find on your Zoom screens. For those calling in by phone or watching our panel on the live stream, you can ask a question by emailing events@mei.edu. And if you have any technical issues, please email the same address, events@mei.edu. Now over to you, Mr. Canel. Thank you all so much again.
And good morning. Thanks a lot, Kate, for showing this really powerful and moving exhibit at the Middle East Institute, and for co-hosting with us this really promising discussion with two Paris-based leading Syrian contemporary artists, Bady Dalloul and Nagham Hodaifa. So this event, as you said, is part of our museum series. That's a new program that we launched last month, and that proposes dialogues around art and artists from a French perspective, part French perspective. So this museum series is moderated by Vanessa Badre, whom I am really happy to introduce. Vanessa is currently an American University faculty fellow. She's a lawyer, art historian, and keynote speaker, specializing in observing and analyzing works of art to explore broader social and economic themes and concepts. You can discover her activity, including lectures and seminars, on her website, www.vanessabadre.com. So the next museum series will take place on the second half of May and will be dedicated to the Duchamp collections at the Hirshhorn Museum. So I hope you will join us for this promising discussion too. And beyond the museum series, the Maison Française also offers other online events for the moment, and I hope on-site events in the near future, especially films and talks that you can discover on our website. And I would like to mention one discussion about sustainable agriculture tomorrow at noon for the Earth Day. So we hope to see you very soon at Maison Française, and we are very happy to be part of this program. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you soon.
Now over to Vanessa.
Hello everybody. Well, we are all very happy to be with you today and very honored to meet Nagham and Bady, Nagham, Hodaifa and Bady Dalloul. So it's a great honor to introduce you. So I'm going to say a few words. So many things to say about both of you. So it's a very difficult choice to find the right words. As I'm French, you know, and I'm very faithful to French tradition, I will begin by Nagham, Hodaifa, ladies first, of course. So Nagham, you are born in Syria. You graduated from the Department of Painting of the Faculty of Fine Arts in Damascus, at Damascus University. And you left Syria in 2005 to pursue your studies, and you received a PhD in contemporary art history at La Sorbonne, which is the best French university. So congratulations for you. You held many exhibitions and performances, and you combine music, dance, poetry, calligraphy. So a very broad spectrum of activities. You explore the human condition through the representation of body, and particularly the female body. And most of your paintings, and I was very fortunate to go to the MEI and to see your masterpiece. So you are very interested in female body, the female body which is intentionally headless and faceless. Now, gentlemen, the gentleman from Japan, Mr. Bady Dalloul, you know, for French people, it's very interesting that you are in a residency in Japan, because for us French people, we all know about the Villa Medici in Rome, and when we think about residency abroad in the French cultural spectrum, we always thought about Rome and Villa Medici. So the Villa Kuyoyama, which is one of a famous French residency for fellows who do some research in art and creativity. It's really interesting for us to think that you are really a citizen of the world, you know, from Syrian roots, brought up in Paris, and now in Japan. So very interesting for us to measure the worldwide dimension of art. You come from a family of artists, so we might say it's in your blood. You graduated from the École Nationale des Beaux-Arts in Paris, which is well, the top of the top, with honors from the jury, says your bio. And you are interested in society, politics, economic, historical dimension. So you create a narrative bringing together imagination and real world to try to understand what happened in your homeland in Syria. And now I have the honor to introduce Lynn Snage. Thank you, Lynn, to welcome us today. And you are the director of the Art and Culture Center at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. And it is with Lynn that I visited the exhibition. So I was very fortunate and very happy, because Lynn was able to give me all the explanations and the understanding of your of your works. So Lynn had multiple activities. She was deputy director, Lebanon and regional projects manager for arts and culture for the Middle East at the British Council, operating out of Beirut. And she has extensive experience in strategy and planning, as well as project management. So Lynn, now the floor is yours, because of course we are all eager to visit this exhibition before talking to Bady and Nagham. So could you tell us about some works of the exhibition?
Of course. It is such a pleasure to be with everyone today on this panel and to be speaking about this very special exhibition, I have to say. The exhibition is entitled In This Moonless Black Night, Syrian Art After the Uprising. And the show brings together the works of 14 leading contemporary Syrian artists who are reflecting on the past decade of hope, trauma, and pain that the Syrian people have experienced and continue to experience. The exhibition as a whole marks the 10th anniversary of the uprising, of the start of the uprising, and the artists that are in the show are all outside of Syria. Some of them are in Germany, some of them are in the US, some of them are in Lebanon, and in France, as we are in their company today. The works in the show span painting, multimedia, photography, video, and installation, and they reflect on the loss, the war, and the impact of the conflict on the country and its people. But they do it with subtlety and with a lot of grace and humanity. And I think the show offers a very different entry point and a very different perspective to how wars are perhaps depicted, presented, and experienced. And they have this reflective and very beautiful aspect to them. There are 27 works in the show, and I'd love to highlight a few for our audience so they can get a flavor on some of the works. And I'm going to ask my colleague to put up perhaps the first artwork that I would like to speak about briefly. So the show opens with two of those, a series of those photographs. You're seeing one of them. This is by artist Usama Esid, and Usama is a photographer. He's a portrait photographer. The work that you're seeing is entitled Fatima, and is a photo he took during a visit to a refugee camp in Turkey in 2013. Usama, I think, was taken aback by the welcome that he had received in the camp by the children. This can be a school portrait, a school photo, and you see Fatima even is holding flower and has offerings. This is so, this humanizes this whole topic at the time of refugee and displacement. But you can see also the almost terrified look in an anxious look in Fatima's eyes. So the show opens with Fatima and another portrait of his series entitled Walid. The next piece I would like to highlight and speak about, the two pieces actually that we're seeing, are by artist Azza Abu Rabeh. Azza is a multimedia artist and a printmaker, and her etchings, that you see two of them here, tell the story of human survival. Azza is an artist and an activist, and she was actually jailed in Damascus in 2015. And those works are part of the Women in Prison series that she had made from her memory of that time. So the first one on your left is, we were in 1 3-meter square room. We were 15 women. And then the one that you see on the right of your screen, the bed and the white pillow became my new home. She has other works in the show, and I have to say all of them, the works we are sharing on the screen do not do justice to seeing the work in person. The next slide is this work is by artist Muhammad Hafiz. Muhammad is an artist, but also an architect. He's a trained architect, and you can see that a little bit in the work itself. So this work is from a series called Baggage Series. Those are hauntingly beautiful. They're small dioramas of destroyed homes and intimate places of people that he puts on in the suitcases. Of course, this is a symbolic object for anybody who is leaving home. You take what you can with you, and inside those suitcases, when you open them, you have, you go into the intimate lives and places of people that they had to abandon. He names his pieces after real people who he has interviewed. This piece is called Ayman and Ghina, and Ayman and Ghina are actually two people that he had interviewed that had to flee as, leave breakfast on the table and leave their home, thinking that they will come back in a couple of days, and it's been 9 years. I want to highlight an iconic piece as well in the show that we have. This is by Tamam Azam. It's called Freedom Graffiti. Tamam Azam is a painter and a collage artist. He's known for those photomontage, for those juxtapositions of famous works. This is, of course, The Kiss by Klimt, that he juxtaposes over a destroyed building. This went viral at the beginning of, in 2013, shortly after, and it almost became a visual representation of the war and of the resilience of people, of beauty and death, if you want it. The last piece that I would like to highlight is by Ghoroba Diab. Ghoroba is an artist in Paris. She left Syria during the war and still very much carries this scar with her. Her work, I find, is very, very serene and graceful in the face of the horror and the pain that she is actually trying to communicate in her work. So this is almost an endless journey of people who are walking, but it's almost as if their journey never ends and they don't know where they're walking to. You don't see their faces, but you see their body posture, and it's almost burdened by this pain of leaving. So the show is so diverse and so beautiful. It almost it does transcend Syria in the way that it also deals about, global issues around displacement, the human cost of war, and the humanity, and how we see the other. And it's all through the personal experiences of the artists themselves.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, very interesting. I think everybody is dying to go and see the works of art. The beauty of contemporary art is that we can ask questions to the artists who are alive with us and sharing the same world and reality as us. So it's really good for us to be with you today. And maybe, Bady, I'd like to ask you the first question. Could you explain us some of your works, because it gives a lot of food for thought, but it requires also some explanations. When I saw them, and I don't know if we'll be able to see some images, but when I saw them, I thought about board games. And I was wondering the theme you were dealing with. And for French people, there is a famous game that children play with, which is called Le Nain Jaune, the yellow dwarf, but I don't know if there is another translation. But anyway, the board game looks like these boxes, and we observed also little miniature and medallions that reminds us of illuminations and medieval manuscript. So I'm sure you have a lot to share with us to give to shed light on your work.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your question, dear. First, I would like to thank the Middle East Institute and the French Embassy and all who made this talk possible. Indeed, to answer your question, my work is yes, about an old board game. I chose deliberately the path of this old board game in order to illustrate a part of our life. Life, as I see it, is really not in our hands. Destiny is not in our hands. Things that are bigger than our will are always modifying the way the things we have planned usually, and exhibited in this exhibition among this beautiful group of artists. The message here is globally that our country, the country of our parents, is not something that we can decide on. It is something we are part of, but we see it through screens, we hear it through telephone, and this is unfortunately the way we deal with migration, the way we deal with distance and with homeland, in my opinion. Yes.
And how these works are related with other works or other series that you did in the past? Are you specialized in board games, to speak roughly, or what is your other kind of works?
Well, the notion of game and the randomness of how the events could take place or not is reminds me, and in my practice is something part of the way history is written so far. Of course, history is very precise, but it is also a great playwright, in my opinion, for the worst and for the best. And sometimes in my work, we will see card games. Sometimes we will see board games such as this one, but sometimes only reference to the randomness of events and the randomness of how history is written overall.
Thank you. And when I look at all the medallion, how do you build the narrative? Do you read it from top to bottom or from left to right? Every medallion is, I suppose that every medallion, I observe them very carefully with all the characters. So every medallion is telling a story, I suppose.
This is correct. In fact, there is no particular order in these two works to read the images, the different images. It could be in any order, and it would always say the same thing, which is how our life is not in our hands. So in the first one, in the King of System 1, you see different people trying to get their life in hands, try to have control or some kind of control, but so far they cannot. They're always arguing at work, arguing with their family, burning garbages, arguing when driving or when going to buy food. And in the other one, the King of the System 3, it is more, it is another story, but it is a story of how people migrate, and sometimes you do not choose your destination, and you arrive in places, and it becomes your home. And always, well, the central part of it is the time, the watch that you have, and it still continues.
Thank you, Bady.
You're welcome.
Now, Nagham, I would be very happy to ask you some questions as well. Well, your masterpiece in the exhibition is named Chemise de Nuit, Night Gown. So could you tell us about this work of art? It's a triptych, so it's very interesting, a very traditional structure. from the Middle Age. And I'm sure you didn't choose it by luck. It was something that you wanted to make. So could you explain this work of art?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be in this program and in this exposition. Thank you for you to receiving me. So, Nightgown is like other theme of my artwork. It grows through a continual reflection over many years. Time doesn't follow a linear structure in my work. This theme began to appear in my painting with the memory of a nightgown given of my grandmother to me before I a few months before I moved to France. It was in August 2005. But by this gift, a female temporality was transmitted. I never slept with it. Every time I dress it, I began to draw myself and to draw this nightgown in my journal since 2009. The first canvas in this subject date from 2012. Only this painting is of my height in dimension, but it's headless and faceless. So what you show in the exposition is the continuity of this theme in my artwork. This triptych I was made in the last year with other paintings about this leitmotif that I never show yet in exposition. The triptych goes back to the nature and to the body landscape and to the woman body. I would like to bring your attention, please, to the middle piece of this artwork. You can see the nightgown is like the sea, and at the same time, the hand in the foreground give erotic dimension. The clothes remind us the uterus. Nightgown is linked to the intimacy. It cannot be seen or observed except by a very close person. It reflects the human universal conditions and a question raised by it, carrying a social or anthropological dimension. This fabric carries a story of keeping, of remembering, or to be a fetish object. It permits the invisible to be invisible and evoke the rapid desire, rapid skin, that rapid exalt the body, make it animals. The theme highlight also the feminine domestic life. When formerly women was often worked spinning and weaving clothing manufacturer for her family.
Thank you, Nagham. When I visited the expedition with Lynn, I observed that you used papier d'arche, so arch paper, which is very French fabrication of paper, and I saw that the damp paper has crinkled, and I was wondering if it was part of your work, to show with the paper that has crinkled because it has been impregnated with water because it's watercolor. Well, maybe you might use watercolor if it's mixed technique. And I was wondering if you wanted to show the vulnerability and the fragility of the female body with this paper, this crinkled paper?
With the arch paper, yes, maybe. With the I often worked with a mixed media, and the arch paper especially. It's we can make a lot of things. Yeah, donc
when you talk about mixed techniques, so when I looked at the painting, I thought it was watercolor.
Yeah.
What is the other technique?
Not only watercolor here. I like in my painting. Comment dire? Painting from raw material is necessary for me.
Yes.
And the knowledge of the alchemy of the trade is basic in my art. So when I made this piece and all my painting, oftenly I used pigment. Yeah, pigments, and for example, metal cellulose, and I research in the very ancient
Time. Yes.
yeah, for making the colors.
Very, very interesting. And could you tell us some words about the fragmentation of the body? Why the body is so much fragmented? Well, spontaneously, I thought that it was because you wanted to show the fragility of human being, or is there another message that you want to deliver?
This is so. This is a little bit. When I was, it's a little bit. Excuse me. Generally, I don't show the face.
Yes.
And this thing is related with the thoughts in my PhD, and with the time it was
Would you like to say it in French?
Yeah, maybe it's more it's yeah. I'm sorry because donc en fait la frog c'est quelque chose en fait qui est lié avec il y a 10 ans, quand j'étais en train de travailler sur la question de visage, et en fait, j'ai travaillé beaucoup en fait avec la danse, et petit à petit, en fait, je suis arrivée à un autre esthétique de corps.
Oh, yes, I'm going to translate that. In fact, Nagham was very interested in the representation of dance, and so through the motion of the bodies, Nagham discovered another way to see the body. So that led us to this idea of fragmentation, another way, another vantage point to look at the body of dancers. So thank you, Nagham. Now I would like to ask Bady about, and Nagham as well later on, about exile, because, well, it's very interesting. We talk about exile, but Bady, you're born in France. So where do you belong to? Well, you can answer to me that you are a citizen of the world, but I will not be satisfied with this answer. So we are all very interested in this, the fact that you are born in France, Syrian Syrian parents, and that you are so linked and connected and so faithful to your homeland.
Yes, thank you for your question. Indeed, it is a difficult question. Of course, I will tell you that I am both. But in fact, I am also none. So it is, well, we can turn it philosophically, and especially now as I am talking from Japan, it makes it even more complicated. I came here in order to understand more what was happening in where I grew up, Paris, and also to understand more the travel of my parents in the 80s, the travel they've made for their studies at the time to Paris, and of which I am the product. The film I am doing in Japan is about Syrian people who came to Japan exactly for the same reason, sometimes for their studies, and who stayed and considered Japan their home. Of course, the two countries are different, and the way they accept foreigners are also different. But it is this difference that sometimes makes you realize what the process more clearly, in fact, I think. Did I answer your question?
Yes, how would you describe your relationship with Syria? It's because, in fact, it's a place, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I read, you've never been to Syria, or do you know the country? How often did you go? With war, it might have been difficult. So,
Yes.
so is it a sort of imagination country?
In fact, it is true that my situation is more fortunate than I think some artists who left Syria during these last 10 years. I grew up in France. My parents are Syrians. So it is my heritage and my language, I mean, one of my languages, that is the link to this country. I have visited it often during my childhood. In fact, I get once a year till the events started in 2011. And then, of course, it became more and more difficult. And it's been now 10 years, unfortunately. And with 10 years, you have the time to see it only through distance, to imagine it, and to more and more it becomes abstract, of course, as you cannot touch it, as you cannot smell it firsthand. Of course.
Yes, and if we choose the word exile, what is it relevant for you? Do you consider you're in exile or not? I would answer no. What do you think?
Of course not.
You belong where you are? Do you feel that you belong to France or?
Hello? Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
I was wondering what was your relationship with exile? Do you consider an exile or not?
Yes, no. I am fortunate to not consider it as an exile. It is the country of my parents, first of all, which is a difference, I guess, with the other artists that are exhibited in this exhibition.
Thank you, Bady. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nagham, of course, you are in a situation that is different from Bady because you are born in Syria and you arrived in France in 2005. You studied there. So what is your relationship with France, with the word, and with the concept of, well, concept's not the right word, but the idea, the reality of exile?
So when the conflict began in Syria 10 years ago, I was so troubled. And that was so difficult for me to show or my painting or to continue normally to go on living. And I avoid to presenting in a direct way and in the circumstances in which artists can produce their art in exile are completely different from their country, and it's not easy. They depend in market and in public taste. They need people who support them, especially directors, publishers, galleries, collectors, and institutions who can distribute their work. If artists are enabled to find a way into a culture scene and gaining access to the art business in their receiving country, that can lead them to cease their previous artistic activities completely. Many aspects play a role here, which don't necessarily have anything to do with artistic quality. I respond to you in general about exile and about art. For me, about the exile, as I come in 2005, and it's really it's voluntary. I come here, and I was a need to travel to see another culture. It's a little it's different from a Syrian person who come during the events.
I
so
see.
I don't know if I respond to you.
Completely. But did you have the feeling, a sort of guilt maybe to have abandoned your country, or not?
No, not really, because when the events was began,
Yes.
I have a lot of guilty sensation about to show my painting, but not. And for example, more recently, I go back to Syria. After the last year, I was in France in 2005, and from 2009 until this year, that's meaning there's 2 months ago, I go back and I see all the things, and that was very necessarily for me to go and to see the family, to see all the things, the homeland, and
So Syria and daily life in Syria continue to inspire your work in France.
Yeah, but not in a direct way. It's meaning I always my team. It's not comment dire, it comes from the intimate memory and not from the situation Syrian, from the crisis. It's really I'd never worked about the war until now. So I tried to take some distance.
I see. And we were wondering as well if you had a community of Syrian artists. So if you know each other, if you are spread all over the world, or if there is a French community of Syrian artists, how do you communicate? Do you help each other? Is there an emulation, where when we talk about French artists of the 19th century or beginning of the 20th century, Braque and Picasso, or Derain and Matisse, and they work together, observing the same scene and painting the same scene. So it's even the Impressionists is the same. So do you have this kind of relationship, of community, working together, creating emulation?
I want to begin about the France because it's a formidable area. This is a cosmopolitan landscape. Okay, here I meet people from over all the world. This is the first thing, and I have contact with especially when with my study, during my study, and with the artists and of course there have many of artists here, and we know each other, and finally it's the circle artistic is not very big, and the artistic inside of Syria and outside of Syria, we know each other. Here in France, there's some collective of artists. For example, Caravane culturelle syrien or Porte ouverte sur l'art syrien, and they make a lot of events here. And not only on France, but also in Europe, they're making some events.
Thank you. And you, Bady, are you connected with the French, the Syrian community in France or abroad? Is there a strong, for instance, I was wondering, I saw the works of all the artists who participate in this exhibition. And I was wondering, do you know each other? For instance, have you ever met? What is your relationship between all of you?
Well, yes, of course. Some names are famous, and there are some artists that I know. For instance, Nagham, yes, we, as Nagham mentioned, there are different circles of artists. I graduated from Beaux-Arts of Paris, and I met the people of my promotion, but not only, of course, the people who graduated from the school, but there are also the Syrian artists that you mentioned in the collectives as well. I'm taking part of in an exhibition in Paris at the Cité des Arts these days, which is suggested by the collective Porte ouverte sur l'art, which I invite you to go and see, at least online, which is beautiful and curated by Nora Philippe. And there are many Syrian artists in this exhibition, but not only. So, yes, but not only.
Thank you. And we were wondering also, because we are French, this is the Maison Française, we were curious to know your feelings about France and art, and obviously France is a generous mécène and sponsor, because you are invited in residence in Japan. So do you think that, I don't want to force you, to oblige you to say that you are grateful to France, of course not, but did you feel you had a good context, a good environment to thrive and to blossom, thanks to all the institutions and the teaching given by France? For you, Bady, you are born in France, but especially for Nagham, who came not in exile, as I understood, but who came specially to France. You could have chosen all other places in the world, Nagham, but you chose to come to France. So, what are your feelings about that?
For me, so
both of you.
Yeah. I am an artist, come from Syria, okay, but I am also citizen of the world, and recently I naturalized French citizen. So Paris and European cities present an extraordinary cultural richness, allow meeting and sharing. Here in France, I showed my work from the first year of my arrival in France. It was a personal show that took place in Lyon in 2006. And then arrived in Paris, and between study and paintings, I organized several expositions and performance and cultural events. So, especially when I was in Cité Internationale de Paris, and here I make a lot of events, and I was elected as a president of a residence committee. See, I only speak about this to show this is before the events in Syria. And during my PhD, coinciding with the events in Syria, I put myself a little bit away from the artistic scene by devoting myself to research. Okay.
Thank you. And Bady, what could you tell us?
Well, it is an amazing opportunity. Of course, I'm grateful as I graduated from the Beaux-Arts of Paris, and it was a very inspiring environment. Artists from all over the world coming to Paris in order to blossom. But of course, it is also a very competitive environment. And if you intend to live out of your art, you also need to be up to the stake and continue to work hard on it. So yes, it is amazing. We can apply to grants with serious projects. We can find the level also of the discussions. I must say, the level of discussions in Paris is very high most of the time. We can go very deep with the people of our field, but also the people outside our field. If I must talk, if I'm talking in a general level, of course. Mm-hmm. So this is unique, and being a resident of the Villa Kujoyama, I can say it from a very personal point of view that the conditions of work here are extraordinary. And the team of the Villa is amazing. The team of the Institut Français makes a great work in, how do we say, diffusion of the work.
Spreading or information, I don't know.
Diffusion is advertising and communication and introducing our works to great professionals here. So we really feel.
And you're going to have an exhibition in Hiroshima soon.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit of the work you are going to present there at Hiroshima?
Yes, with pleasure. It is not the first time I have exhibited at Hiroshima Art Document, curated by Miss Yukiko Ito, who has been doing this art exhibition for 20 years, exhibiting major French, Japanese, and foreign artists at this event. And usually it is in collaboration with the Memorial Museum of Hiroshima, but not every year. And this time I was able and grateful to produce a part of my work that was shown at the Palais Tokyo last year, which are the drawings inside the matchboxes that perhaps you have seen in the press release. So I have exhibited a good number of them in this traditional old house.
Thank you. Lee,
Welcome.
we are all eager to have your comments, and please, could you tell us a few words?
Absolutely, Vanessa. I've been listening to the fantastic things that Nagham and Bady shared about, their opportunities, their journeys, their work. And I have to say that this is clearly it reaffirms the importance of artistic exchange, right? Whether it comes voluntarily or as a result of a lot of Syrian artists having to leave their country. This has definitely, for the worst reasons, of course, but this has actually resulted in an explosion of Syrian contemporary art outside. And what the work that we have seen, which some of it is represented in the exhibition, is another narrative about Syria and that transcends Syria, that those young artists are not only producing outside about Syria, but in the societies where they are, such as Nagham and Bady. Their work also helps start those important conversations in the society where they are, right? Where they choose to go or where they are forced to find themselves in. And their work helps us as a society to move forward on issues of migration, issues of exchange, issues of diversity. And they actually create those pluralities. Bady is on this fantastic, long art residencies to reflect and to produce. And his work is going to help further this thinking. So this not only reaffirms the importance of this mobility, that we need, this exchange that we need to happen, but also the arts being a fantastic medium to actually help us reflect on those things and draw us back to the important unifying state of us all being human, right? Of all of us having to reflect together on those things so that we can all move forward. On the feelings of exile, just one word on the feeling of your questions around exile, around identity broadly. I think those feelings of identity manifest themselves more when we leave the homeland, whether voluntarily or not. We become, I think, more aware of who we are and where we are coming from. And we start reflecting on those things. We don't necessarily reflect on them as much when we are in our original sort of countries within our communities. But when you have to find your voice and your place in a new country, suddenly they emerge more strongly and you become much more sensitive about how you are represented and the language in which you are characterized. And those are actually things that are important and layered over. If you are living in a crisis and you're labeled in a certain way, that is even, that exasperates your process.
Lynn, I'm very sorry because it is the end of our meeting. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Bady. Good night, Bady. Thank you, Nagham. I hope we will meet in person one day. Well, I'm looking forward to it if you are back from Japan to Paris and if you're still in Paris, Nagham. Thank you very much. It was absolutely wonderful, very interesting. Kate, if you could tell us a word of goodbye and conclusion.
Sure. Thank you, Vanessa, for your wonderful moderating. Thanks, Lynn, for your insights. And thank you so much, Bady from Japan and Nagham from Paris for those insights into your art. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. And please look out for the next museum series event at the French Cultural Services in mid-May, exploring the Duchamp collection at the Hirshhorn. And please do visit the MEI website to make your appointment to our Syria exhibit to see Nagham and Bady's work in person.